The shadow moved before the man did. It slid along the snow-covered wall of the bus stop, stretching thin and crooked beneath the flickering streetlight. Long bent. Wrong. Elias noticed it only because it didn't match him. His body stood still, hunched inside his coat, breath fogging the frozen air. Yet the shadow crept forward as if eager, its edges trembling like it was listening for something. Wind dragged across the empty road, carrying the sound of distant trees cracking under ice. The last bus had already passed. Elias checked his phone. No signal. Dead. Just like the street around him. Then the whisper came. Low. Close. Not carried by wind. You shouldn't stand where they can see you. Elias spun around. The road behind him was empty. Snow lay smooth and untouched. No footprints. No cars. No people. His breath quickened. The shadow at his feet shifted again, curling inward, thickening as if gathering itself. Hello, Elias said, his voice brittle. The shadow twitched. You hear us now. The streetlight flickered hard, plunging the stop into darkness for half a second. In that instant, Elias felt it, presence. Not beside him. Not behind him. Beneath him. When the light snapped back on, the shadow was no longer shaped like a man. It had a mouth. And it was opening. By morning, Elias had convinced himself the voice at the bus stop belonged to winter itself. Cold did strange things to sound. Wind could bend it, carry it low along the ground, make it feel intimate when it wasn't. That was what he told himself as he stood in the narrow kitchen of his rented house, watching frost creep like white veins along the window panes. The sun was up, pale and weak, but the house still felt dim, as if light had to push harder here to exist. North Hollow looked harmless in daylight. Small, quiet, snow-covered roofs pressed close together like they were trying to share warmth. Elias had moved here 3 weeks earlier for work, trading city noise for silence. He had thought silence would calm him. Instead, it pressed on his ears. The house was older than it appeared. The landlord had described it as well-preserved. But Elias noticed things that didn't fit. The floors absorbed sound instead of echoing it. Corners stayed dark even when lamps were on. His shadow always seemed a half-second late, dragging behind him like it didn't want to follow. He noticed it most when he stopped moving. That morning, as he stood still with his coffee cooling in his hands, his shadow leaned the wrong way. Elias frowned and shifted his foot. The shadow corrected itself, snapping back into place. A trick of light, he thought. Nothing more. At work, the county records office smelled of old paper and metal radiators. Elias liked routine. Files, dates, signatures. Facts didn't whisper. Facts didn't move when you weren't looking. By noon, snow had begun falling again. Thick, slow flakes erased the world outside the windows. Elias worked through a backlog of archived property documents from the early 1900s. North Hollow hadn't changed much since then. Same roads, same boundaries, same names repeating across generations. That's when he saw it. A thin folder, misfiled between land deeds, its label nearly erased by time. Monroe. Elias. He smiled despite himself. Coincidences happened. Names repeated. Still, he hesitated before opening it, fingers lingering on the brittle paper. The records inside were sparse but unsettlingly precise. Born 1881. Arrived in North Hollow. Winter 1909. Occupation linguist/folklorist. Elias's smile faded. He scanned further. Notes taken by town officials, written in careful, nervous script. Mentions of complaints, disturbances, night behavior. One line underlined twice made his stomach tighten. Subject claims shadows speak when addressed. Elias closed the file too quickly. The sound echoed louder than it should have. You okay? A voice asked. He looked up, startled. Martha, the senior clerk, stood across the room, watching him with narrowed eyes. Yeah, Elias said. Just weird coincidence. She didn't ask what kind. That evening, the sky darkened early. Snow muffled the town until North Hollow felt buried alive. Elias walked home fast, boots crunching on ice. As he passed the only streetlight near his house, he slowed. The shadow beneath him stretched long and thin. It didn't move when he did. Elias swallowed and forced himself forward. Inside, he locked the door, then locked it again. He turned on every light. The house still felt wrong. As night deepened, the silence grew heavier, like something pressing its ear against the walls. Elias tried reading, then television, then nothing at all. He sat on the edge of his bed, listening to the quiet breathe. That's when he heard it. A soft sound. Not a voice. Not quite. A response. It came from beneath the floorboards. You found him. Elias stood so fast the chair fell over. Who's there? His voice shook despite him. Silence. Then, closer now, right under his feet. He stood exactly where you are standing. The lights flickered once. Elias backed away, heart hammering as the shadow at the base of the bed thickened, spreading outward like spilled ink. And for the first time since arriving in North Hollow, Elias understood one terrible truth. Whatever spoke to shadows had been waiting for him to listen. Winter had a way of swallowing sound in North Hollow. The snow pressed against windows, blanketing the town in quiet so absolute that even footsteps seemed loud. Elias learned quickly that silence was not empty. It was full of listening. He felt it every time he moved through the narrow streets, past houses with curtains drawn tightly, past children called indoors too early, past neighbors who stared but never spoke. At work, the archives became a labyrinth of half-truths and forgotten names. Elias pored over more documents, finding journal entries, town records, and letters, all pointing to a man with his exact name. The first Elias Monroe, a linguist and folklorist who arrived in North Hollow in 1909, obsessed with what he called umbri voces, the voices beneath light. The old records were fragmented but telling. Accounts spoke of strange nocturnal behavior, of the man wandering the streets at night, muttering to shadows. Livestock would avoid his presence. Children would cry if he passed. The townspeople wrote it as if he were both part of their world and entirely separate. He said the shadows remember, one note read. They learn. They speak. And they never forget. Elias felt a chill move up his spine. He closed the folder but could not close his mind. Remembered shadows. Voices. Waiting. That night, the house pressed in on him. Every corner seemed deeper than it should be, and every shadow trembled with anticipation. The whispers returned, soft at first, almost polite. But gradually they thickened, forming words that seemed to come from the floor itself. You've come back. We were patient. Do you see them now? Elias spoke aloud, shaking. I don't understand. What, who are you? The shadows did not answer directly. Instead, they writhed beneath the floorboards, stretching thin, curling up corners, thickening under furniture. The lights flickered as though reluctant to illuminate the room, revealing shapes that were never there before. For the first time, Elias wondered if the cold had finally gotten to him. Hallucinations, paranoia, exhaustion. But the evidence mounted too quickly. The shadows followed him in the mirror's reflection, even when his back was turned. Objects shifted slightly when he wasn't looking. His boots, the coat rack, even papers on his desk, they were never where he left them. The next day, he attempted to leave the house. Snow pressed against the door like a wall. He trudged through drifts to the streetlight near his home, the same one that had betrayed him weeks before, but the shadow waited, elongated and malformed, reaching toward him without movement. You know our names. He froze. His own voice felt swallowed by the wind. The world was silent except for the whisper. Neighbors avoided his eyes. One woman, a frail figure in a dark coat, stopped in the middle of shoveling snow. You shouldn't be here alone, she said. Her eyes darted behind him, then down the street. Not after dark. Not if you answer them. Answer who? He asked, panic rising. She shook her head. You already know. Leave it be. He walked on faster. The snow made no sound under his boots, and the shadow followed, stretching beneath the streetlight, almost playful, almost patient. Back at home, Elias tried research. He searched the town's library, the older archives, even whispered to anyone willing to answer questions. But the more he learned, the less he understood. One witness account chilled him most. He spoke to the shadows as though they were friends. He asked them questions. They answered, sometimes immediately, sometimes years later. Once they know a name, they never forget it. Elias realized then, the shadow at his feet was listening, learning, remembering, waiting. That night, Mrs. Calder came to the door. Her eyes were wide, glassy, almost empty. "You've started listening," she said flatly. "I don't know what you mean," Elias said. Her lips moved, whispering over the cold wind. "Don't answer them." He did. And winter never let him leave. "Who?" "You already know." And just like that, she melted back into the snow. Elias's sleep was broken by a recurring dream. He stood in a frozen field under a starless sky. Shadows moved there, infinite and patient. He saw them coil and twist like smoke, forming shapes that were human only at first glance. Then one of them stepped forward, speaking in his own voice. "You were always meant to stand here." He woke, shaking, breath fogging the room. Frost clung to the windows in unnatural patterns. Sharp angles, impossible geometries. The shadows beneath the floorboards stretched when he moved, even if he only shifted his weight. He began to notice micro-events, small and subtle, each more disturbing than the last. A pen rolling across the floor on its own. Footprints appearing in snow outside the door, stopping abruptly, as if something had lingered, watching. Whispers carried in the wind, sounding almost human, saying words he could almost understand. A neighbor knocking, then retreating silently before he could answer. Elias's paranoia intensified. He stopped leaving the house except for essentials. He tried to contact anyone in town. Calls went unanswered, voices distant. Even when they answered the phone, something was wrong. The shadows became bolder. They whispered during the day. They touched his legs when he walked past them. Sometimes they mirrored him in mirrors, not his reflection, but him, older, hollow-eyed, empty of warmth. By the second week, he realized the worst part. The shadows weren't just shadows. They were memory. They were witness. They were patient. They had learned patience over lifetimes. And now, with him, they were testing the limits of his mind. Then he found the final clue. The journals of the first Elias Monroe described what was coming. Once they speak your name, once you hear their voice, there is no returning. The shadow waits in winter, patient, obedient, inevitable. It does not act quickly. It does not act without cause. It is not cruel. It is relentless. And one day it will call for you. Elias shivered. His apartment felt smaller suddenly. The walls were too close. The shadows pooled beneath the furniture, stretching thin into the corners, listening. The whisper returned, this time closer. "You've answered us." Elias spun, voice tight. "No, I haven't." The air thickened. Lights flickered. Shadows rose from the floor, thickening into shapes almost humanoid, almost patient. He realized the truth. Winter in North Hollow was not about snow or cold. Winter was the silence, the waiting, the voices beneath the light. And now he had become part of it. By the third week, Elias's mind began to fray. Reality shifted. Doors no longer led to the same rooms. Hallways lengthened, then contracted. Time seemed uneven, collapsing in small pockets around him. He started speaking to the shadows out loud, hoping to coax understanding, hoping to control them, hoping to survive. But the shadows did not answer him. They watched, patient, waiting, until one night, a voice broke the suffocating silence. Sharp, urgent, and unmistakably human. "You should have left when you had the chance." Elias realized then that whatever haunted North Hollow, whatever had claimed the first Elias Monroe, was not something he could argue with. Not something he could escape. It would not forgive. It would not forget. And it had already learned his name. The storm hit North Hollow like a living thing. Snow fell in thick curtains, draping the town in a silence that pressed against every building, every roofline, every soul. Streetlights flickered and died, one by one, until the world was swallowed by darkness. Elias had barricaded himself inside his house. Doors were nailed shut, windows taped and layered, lights strung in every room, yet none of it mattered. He felt it immediately. The shadows were no longer contained. They had grown thicker, denser, suffused with a patient intelligence. They moved beneath his feet, coiled in corners, stretched from ceiling to floor like ink seeping through paper. "Stop," he shouted. His voice cracked, echoing oddly. "I don't." A whisper answered, close, intimate, coming from behind his shoulder even though no one was there. "You've been listening. You've been watching. You've been waiting." He spun. The hallway stretched unnaturally, longer than it had ever been, doors opening where none should exist. A familiar coat rack leaned sideways, though he had bolted it to the wall hours before. Every object shifted slightly, impossibly, as if reality itself was folding to accommodate the shadows. Elias ran. Down the stairs. Through the living room. Toward the kitchen. He paused as his reflection caught him in the cracked windowpane. Only it wasn't him. Hollow eyes. Pale, distorted mouth. His own voice whispering from lips that weren't his. "You promised us names." "No." Elias screamed, pounding his fists against the glass. "I didn't." The shadow thickened, solidifying into vague humanoid shapes. Dozens of them, pressed close, looming. They didn't move quickly. They didn't need to. They were inevitable. Patient. "He answered us long ago. Now you will answer too." The lights flickered violently. Elias backed into the corner. The floor beneath him shivered. Shapes rose from it like smoke-forming bodies, coiling, reaching. The house itself seemed alive, breathing, twisting. Hallways multiplied. Ceilings stretched. Floors sagged and rippled. Elias fell to his knees. His mind spun, memories colliding with reality. Every snowstorm, every shadow, every whisper from his arrival. He hadn't understood until now. Winter wasn't a season here. Winter was the waiting. And he had been called. "Please," he whispered. "I don't know your names. I don't know." The shadows laughed, or rather, the air vibrated with voices, layered, human and inhuman. "We know them. We know yours. We know all of them." A mirror fell, shattering into thousands of jagged pieces. Elias saw himself in each fragment, older, hollow-eyed, every shard showing a version of himself he didn't recognize. And from one shard, a mouth moved without a face. "You taught them to speak. Now they will answer." The shadows pressed closer. He could feel the cold of their collective presence, not air cold, but wrong cold, a weight pressing on his chest, sinking into his bones. He ran blindly, only to find hallways looping, doors opening into rooms he'd never seen. Every familiar object was alien now. Even his bed, his desk, his own chair. They had twisted, taken forms that made no sense. "Stop it. Leave me alone," he screamed, clutching his head. A single whisper cut through the chaos, distinct. "You will speak with us, or you will become one of us." And the first shadow emerged, taking shape. Tall, faceless, black as a void. Its presence filled the room, the hallways, the entire house. Elias fell back. "No, no, no." The figure reached out, not with hands, but with darkness itself. The other shadows followed, pressing inward from every corner. Time warped. Seconds stretched into hours, then collapsed. His own reflection in broken mirrors whispered secrets of a past life he had never lived. He saw the first Elias Monroe, standing in the same house, whispering to the shadows in a language of the void, promising names, listening to their patient demands. Elias screamed, and it was no longer his voice. It belonged to the shadows, to winter, to the waiting. "Your name." The darkness swirled around him. It pressed into his mouth, into his ears, into his chest. Every thought, every memory, every fear was exposed, catalogued, and folded into the shadow's patient knowledge. And then silence, or something like it. Elias fell to the floor, hollow-eyed, body trembling, mind splitting. The shadows did not move away. They were everywhere and nowhere, pressed against the walls, the ceiling, the floor, stretching beyond the limits of perception. The last thing he heard before losing himself entirely was a whisper in his own voice. "You are ours." As he was. As all who listen will be. The house grew still. No wind. No snow. No lights. Only the silence remained, and within it, the echoes of a man who had spoken to shadows, forever bound to winter. Spring arrived late, but North Hollow did not change. The snow melted slowly, leaving streets wet and gray. The sun, weak and pale, did little to warm the town. Houses stood silent, windows dark or curtained, doors closed as if by instinct. Life resumed, but cautiously. People whispered behind closed doors. They looked at empty lots, at abandoned houses, and said nothing, as though speaking would invite the shadows back. Elias Monroe's house stood at the edge of town, untouched. Its windows reflected the weak sunlight, but nothing stirred inside. Neighbors reported no movement, no sound, not even the slightest flicker of light. When the postman tried delivering mail, he found the door locked tight, no key in the mailbox, no footprints in the thawing snow. Inside, the shadows remained. They did not vanish with winter. They clung to corners, pooled beneath furniture, and stretched thin into empty spaces, patient and silent. Sometimes, when the light hit just right, a faint movement could be seen, a shift that was not wind, not dust, a ripple across darkness that shouldn't exist. Stories began to surface, whispered carefully among those who had lived in town for decades. Children claimed they sometimes heard soft voices beneath their beds during long winter nights. Names whispered just beyond understanding. Adults, walking home from the store after sunset, saw shadows moving independently of light, stretching toward them, lingering too long. One old woman swore she saw a man standing under a streetlight, pale and frozen, speaking quietly to the darkness. His lips moved, but no sound emerged. No one could confirm what had happened to Elias. No one had seen him leave. No one had seen him die. He was simply gone. And yet, in the coldest corners of every house in North Hollow, something lingered. Something that listened. Something that remembered. Even the snow, now melting, seemed different. It muffled sound not just in distance, but in perception, carrying with it a sense of inevitability, a warning. If you answered the shadow's call, if you heard their whispers, you would never truly leave. And every winter, when the days grow short and the nights long, people swear they see him again, standing beneath the solitary streetlight at the edge of town, watching, speaking softly, always speaking softly to the shadows. The air carries a faint echo, almost a sigh, a whisper that trails off before it can be fully heard. And if you stop moving, if you listen too closely, it calls your name. Winter listens. Winter waits. And the shadows, they never forget. North Hollow moves on. But some doors remain forever closed. Some voices, forever patient. And some names, forever spoken to the dark. The man who spoke to shadows in winter had vanished. But his whispers remained, quiet, precise, and inevitable.